Students, we were doing the chapter Displacing Indigenous People, and we were doing the topic Gold Rush in North America and the growth of industries. So the immigrant European, they had found traces of gold in California in the USA in the year 1840s. This led to gold rush. On January 24, 1848, while working in a small sawmill foreman, James W. Marshall, he discovered gold. So he was building a sawmill for Captain John Sutter using the water from the South Fork of the American River. He noticed several flakes of metal flow through the mill tail race or the turbine and recognized them to be gold. So this discovery touched off one of the most exciting migration in the history of the country. You can see thousands of Europeans, they hurried to America to make a quick fortune. Railways were built across the continent, employing the Chinese workers. A network of railways was completed in the USA by 1870, and in Canada it was completed in the year 1885. Steel tycoon Andrew Carnegie said, "The old nation crept on a snail pace. The man from Scotland became one of the first millionaires industrialists in the USA." He said that the Republic USA thunders on at the speed of an express. So the United States, the growth of a single century, has already reached the foremost rank among nations and is destined soon to outdistance all other in race. The population, you can see in population, in wealth, in annual saving, in public care, in freedom from debt, in agriculture and in manufacture, America already leads the civilized world. An important reason for the progress of industrial revolution in England was that the small peasants, they were losing their land to big landlords and moving down to find works in the factories. But the industries in the North America, they developed for different reasons. For example, to manufacture railway equipment and to produce machinery which would make large-scale farming easier. So both in USA and in Canada, a large number of industrial towns grew and the factories, it multiplied. In the 1860s, the USA had underdeveloped economy, but in 1890 it had become the leading industrial power in the world. Expansion of large-scale agricultural area, vast area of forest land were cleared and a large number of agricultural farms were set up. By 1890, the bison had been almost killed or exterminated. It thus ended the life of hunting that the native had followed for many centuries. By 1892, the USA had completed continental expansion. So within a few years, the USA was setting up its own colonies in Hawaii and in Philippines, and it had now become an imperial power. After the French and the Indian Wars, relations between the British government and the American colonies began to break down. For more than 150 years, the colonies had been developing their society, economy, and self-government. The British had governed them only lightly, but in 1763, this began to change. The British decided that the colonies should help pay for the cost of the war just ended and for their future defense. So the British Parliament, they passed a series of acts or laws calling for taxes on colonial trade. The colonists argued that because the colonies did not have representatives in the English Parliament, it was wrong for the British to tax them. Many colonists refused to pay the taxes and organized protest. Sometimes they clashed with British forces. So in 1770, British soldiers fired into an angry mob in Boston. 5 Americans were killed in the incident, which became to be known as the Boston Massacre. So in 1773, in response to a tax on tea, colonists discussed as Native American dumped tea for British ships into Boston Harbor. This event was later called the Boston Tea Party. So the British government responded to the Tea Party by passing restrictive laws that angered the colonists even more. In 1774, representatives from all the 13 colonies except Georgia, they met in Philadelphia to discuss their complaint against the British government. So the meeting was called the First Continental Congress. A new representative from New England and Virginia talked about gaining independence from Britain. Most of the representatives, however, they favored putting pressure on Parliament by refusing to trade with Britain. This approach failed, and in April 1775, fighting broke out in Concord and Lexington between colonists and the British troops. The colonists were known as Minutemen because they could be ready to fight at a moment's notice. So this battle, it began the American Revolution. So the Second Continental Congress, they met in Philadelphia in May 1775. The representatives, they chose George Washington to command the colonial troops. So in 1776, Thomas Jefferson and other representatives, they drafted a statement calling for separation from Britain. So this document, called the Declaration of Independence, was adopted by Second Continental Congress on July 4, 1776. So the war for independence did not go well for the colonists at first. General Washington barely managed to keep his small army together because of defeats and lack of supplies. Finally, the tide turned in the colonists' favor in 1777 when the British, they were defeated at the Battle of Saratoga in New York. After the victory, France joined the colonies in their war against Britain. The fighting ended in 1781 with the surrender of the British at Yorktown, Virginia. So by the Treaty of Paris in 1783, Britain recognized the independence of the American colonies. So the new nation extended from Canada on the north to Florida on the south and westward to the Mississippi River. So before the war ended, the Second Continental Congress, they drafted a plan of government called the Articles of Confederation. The article adopted in 1781, it provided for a loose union of states and kept most of the powers of government for the individual states. It soon became clear that articles were not adequate for governing the growing nation. So in 1787, a convention was held in Philadelphia to amend the Article of Confederation. Soon the representatives decided to draft an entirely new constitution. The new document was approved by the state in 1788 and took effect in 1789. The constitution, it provides for a federal type of government, a union of states under a strong central government. So the first 10 amendments to the constitution known as the Bill of Rights were adopted in 1791. And the first election under the new constitution were held in 1789. George Washington became the first president. The democratic, you can see the Constitution of the US, which came into force in 1787, included the individual right to property which the state could not deny to its citizens. The democratic rights were, however, denied to the non-whites. The right to vote for representatives to the US Congress and for the president, and right to property were given only to the whites. The governments took no measure to improve the conditions of the native peoples of the USA and Canada. The economic depressions of 1929 and 32, which engulfed the USA, affected all the people. So there was a grim picture of the terrible poor health and education facilities for the natives in the reservation areas. Though the white American felt sympathize for the natives, yet they denied them the benefit of citizenship. So, a major step for the betterment of the Native American was taken when the Indian Reorganization Act of 1834 was passed. It gives the natives in reservation area the right to buy lands and take loans. So in 1950s and in 1960s in the USA and the Canadian government thought of abolishing all special provisions for the native, presuming that they would join the mainstream. It meant that they would adopt European culture, but the natives were severely opposed to this. In 1954, they prepared the Declaration of the Indian Rights. A number of native people accepted the citizenship of the USA. They, however, laid down the conditions that their reservation areas would not be taken away and there would be no interference in their traditions. In Canada also, there was a similar development. In 1969, the Canadian government declared that it would not recognize Aboriginal rights. The natives they severely opposed this announcement. They held a series of demonstrations and debates. So till you can see AD 1982, the question remained unsolved. But the Constitution Act of that year accepted the existing aboriginal treaty rights of the natives. The native peoples of both the countries are fully awakened, though you can see reduced so much in numbers from what they had been in the 18th century. They have forcefully asserted or declared their right to their own cultures and particularly in Canada to their sacred lands in such a powerful way their ancestors could not have done in the 1880s. Australia is the most isolated large landmass in the world. It was so isolated that the oldest form of life have survived to modern times, including the plant such as eucalyptus families and mammals such as monotremes and the marsupials. In Australia, the early human types also survived that were still in the Paleolithic stage when the first British settlers they arrived in the late 18th century. So the Europeans they did not realize the importance of the culture of the aboriginals, so they did not take interest in the writing of history of this isolated continent. As in the case of the American Indians, the date of the first appearance of the aboriginal in the Australia has not been determined. It is known when the aboriginal arrived in Australia. The estimates of the archaeologists they range from 10,000 to 1 lakh years ago. It is generally believed that they came from Southeast Asia maybe 40,000 years ago, living in an isolated and difficult environment. The aboriginals, who probably never numbered more than several hundred thousands, remained a nomadic race living a primitive type of existence. So here comes discovery of Australia. The Europeans they reached to Australia. So in 1606 the Dutch adventurer Torres he sailed through the strait which now bear his name separating Australia and Papua In 1623, Jens Carstens, another Dutch traveller, went along the coast of Cape York, and then in 1642 Tasman landed on the island, later named Tasmania, and in 1770 Captain James Cook reached Australia, and in 1788 the British Penal Colony formed, Sydney founded. So here comes discovery of Australia. The island continent of Australia first became substantially known to the British when it was visited in 1770 by the famous navigator Captain James Cook. The first settlement was established in 1788 as a place of banishment of criminals, but during the 19th century, 5 separate areas were colonized with a sixth colony in the nearby island of Tasmania and a seventh in New Zealand, 1200 miles to the east. So there are points of similarity about the interaction of the European settlers in America and the native peoples and the land in Australia. So in the beginning, Captain Cook reported that the natives were enthusiastic and friendly, but there was a sharp reversal of feeling on the part of the British authorities when Cook was killed by a native not in Australia but in Hawaii. A single incident of this nature was used by the colonizers to justify the act of violence toward the native of the colonies. Nobody could foresee that in the 19th and the 20th centuries, about 90% of the natives of or the aboriginals would die by the exposure to epidemic, by the loss of their land and resources, and in the battle against the European settlers. Most of the early settlers were convicts who had been deported from England. When the jail terms of the convict ended, they were allowed to live as free people in Australia, but on the condition that they would not return to Britain. With no choice but to live a life different in Australia, they began to eject the natives from land and set up their own farms for cultivations. For the economic development of the country, a vast sheep farms and mining station were set up over a long period. Growth of vineyards and wheat farming were established with hard labor. All this formed the basis of the economic prosperity of the country. So now come the topic development of Australia. Self-government and economic expansion. In the year 1850 to 1900, the Australian colonies of New South Wales, South Australia, Tasmania, and Victoria achieved self-government during 1855-1856. Queensland received a constitution similar to that of New South Wales when it was separated from the latter and established as a new colony in 1859. Western Australia remained under the old system owing to its small population and limited economic growth. Democratic political parties developed rapidly after the new constitution came into force. The Australian colonies they became self-governing while undergoing great changes caused by the discovery of gold in 1851. Gold was in fact a cause for the change in the attitude of the British government, which considered that the increasing wealth as well as the growing population of the colonies it justified their assumption of political responsibility. The discovery of gold first in New South Wales and soon afterward in the new colony of Victoria led to an influx of newcomers including professional and skilled people. So in the 1850, Victoria produced more than one-third of the world gold. Between 1852 and 1870, gold's export value was greater than that of wool. Most Australian gold was exported to Britain, which used it to maintain a gold standard for the pound. So Commonwealth of Australia was established on January 1st, 1901 after approval of a draft constitution by Australian voters. So the British Parliament, they had passed legislation in 1900 to enable the Commonwealth to come into existence. The constitutions gave the Commonwealth or the federal government certain defined powers. All residual powers were given to the governments of the six colonies, which were renamed states. In this respect, and in its separate and independent judiciary, the political system resembled that of the United States. Executive authority was established on the British model with a cabinet headed by Prime Minister responsible to the lower house of bicameral legislatures. So, a part of the British Empire, Australia joined forces with Britain in World War I. Australian forces during World War I, all volunteers from a from a population that did not reach 5 million until 1980. So you can see nearly 330,000 served overseas in army, navy and flying corps units. So they incurred 226,000 casualties, including 60,000 killed. Australian forces took part in the naval and landing actions that eliminated the German presence in the South Pacific early in the war. Australian troops also participated in the campaign in the Middle East that ended with Turkey's surrender. Australia's economy and politics were profoundly affected by the scope of the measures that the government took to support the country's war efforts. Okay, the pattern of the industry and the employment changed in the part to provide substitute for product that is unobtainable from Britain during the war. Despite the growth of manufacturing and industrial employment, unemployment was high, greater than 6%, and the Australian economy was not prosperous during the war year. In World War II, the reaction was the same as that of the 1914. Australia was automatically at war without further formality when Britain declared war on Germany on September 3, 1939. Again, forces were sent to the Middle East. The Royal Australian Air Force was rapidly expanded and some of its units took part in the Battle of Britain in 1940. In the difficult military campaign that finally succeeded in eliminating or neutralizing Japanese military forces in the island to the north and northeast of Australia, Australian Army, Navy and Air Force unit played a major role. Australia proper was not invaded but was subjected to 96 attacks by air, which included severe damage to Darwin. Okay, so here you can see that after the Second World War, Australia believed that it must increase its population to avoid the threat of another invasions and launched an immigration program whose goal was to increase Australia's population with the slogan "Populate or Perish." So hundreds of thousands of displaced European they immigrated to Australia with more than 2 million people immigration from Europe during the late 1940 until the 1960. So here you can see the Immigration Minister Arthur Calwell introduced the Assisted Passage Migration Scheme in 1945. So the government was still trying to increase Australia's population, especially with people who have skill in the secondary industry sectors. As the world was transforming into a more industrial and technological world, Australia needed to keep it. So here comes the wind of changes in the government policy toward the immigrations. So in 1968, people were electrified by a lecture by the anthropologist W.E.H. Stanner entitled The Great Australian Silence. The silence of the historians about the origins of the natives. From the 1970s, as was happening in North America, there was an eagerness to understand native as in anthropological curiosities, but as communities with distinct culture, unique way of understanding the nature and climate, with a sense of community which had vast bodies of stories, textiles, and painting and carving skills which should be understood and recorded and respected. Underlying it all was the urgent questions which Henry Renault later articulated in a powerful book, Why Weren't We Told? This condemned the practice of writing Australian history as though it had begun with the discovery of Captain Cook's. So, since then, university departments have been instituted to study native cultures. Gallery of native art have been added to art galleries. Museums have been enlarged to incorporate dioramas and imaginatively designed room explaining the native culture, and native have begun writing their own life histories. So this has been a wonderful effort. It has also been occurred at a critical time because if native culture had remained ignored by this time, much of such cultures would have been forgotten. From 1974, multiculturalism has been the official policy in Australia, which gave equal respect to native cultures to the different cultures of the immigrants from Europe and Asia. From 1970, as the term human right, it began to be heard at the meeting of the UNO and other international agencies. The Australian public realized with dismay that in contrast to the USA, Canada and New Zealand, Australia had no treaties with the natives formalizing the takeover of land by the Europeans. So the government had always termed the land of Australia terra nullius, okay, that is belonging to nobody. So there was a long and agonizing history of children of mixed blood, native European, being forcibly captured and separated from their native relatives. Agitations around these questions led to inquiries and two important decisions. One, to recognize that the native had strong historic bond with the land which was sacred to them and which should be respected. Two, that while past act could not be undone, there should be a public apology for the injustice done to the children in an attempt to keep white and colored people apart. So in February 2008, Kevin, the Prime Minister of Australia, speaking in the Parliament, apologized to the Aboriginal people of Australia for the atrocity committed on them in the past. The Parliament applauded him. Kevin further said they were beginning a new chapter in the history of the continent. He admitted all the wrongdoings of the government in the past and promised that in future all the people will be given equal opportunities to make progress, whether they are Aboriginal or others who had settled in Australia.